All right, stop what you're doing and give me a minute. Close out of whatever you were looking at, set the laundry aside, and just focus here, because I need to talk to you about a TV show. Not just any show, but something that, if you watched it growing up, probably stuck with you in ways you haven't even thought about. And if you missed out, trust me, we need to fix that right now. MASH. The moment you say that word, people from a certain era just feel it. There's something about it, like a gentle tap on your shoulder that pulls you back in time. Maybe you remember sitting with your mom on the sofa as the credits rolled. Maybe your whole family gathered around making popcorn on a Saturday night. Or you were that curious teenager, sneaking glimpses at the grown-ups show, the one set during a war that felt distant and confusing, but somehow it had you hooked. However you first encountered it, MAS made itself at home in your memories. It dug in deep and lingered. And today, we're getting into the nitty-gritty, how the show reinvented itself, the cast changes nobody saw coming, the secrets and tensions behind the scenes, those history-making moments, and the fate of some beloved stars once the cameras stopped rolling. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's dig into what made MASH legendary. Here's a quick rundown for anyone who's new, though honestly, most people reading this probably know MASH inside and out. On CBS from 1972 to 1983, 11 seasons, it centered on the doctors, nurses, and staff at the 4077th Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, a bunch of folks thrown into the mess of the Korean War, forced to stitch bodies back together with humor as their best coping tool. Larry Gelbart created it. He wanted MASH to stay sharp and honest from the very beginning. His goal? Say something true about war, that it's futile, a spectacular failure, something humanity should never repeat. And he used comedy as his weapon, because, honestly, sometimes you need to make people laugh before you hit them with something hard, and that's what sticks. You want numbers? Try this on for size. The finale pulled in 106 million viewers. Seriously. That's a crowd no city in America could hold. That record for a scripted TV episode stands untouched. Game of Thrones, Friends, anything in the past 40 years, none of them came close. MASH will probably never be topped. Now, it aired for 11 seasons, which is wild considering the Korean War itself was only 3 years. MASH stretched 8 years longer than the real conflict it was portraying. The writers needed to invent fresh stories, new tensions, angles on tragedy and hope in that little South Korean hospital. And, most of the time, it worked. But keeping a series firing on all cylinders for over a decade isn't easy. MASH had its growing pains, especially when it came to cast departures that caught the audience completely off guard. Let's rewind all the way to the start, and here's a fun bit of trivia even a lot of fans don't know. Think about Father Mulcahy, the gentle priest of the 4077th. Most of us picture William Christopher immediately, but here's the twist. He wasn't in the pilot. George Morgan played Mulcahy. And believe it or not, he barely got screen time. Just reaction shots. No lines, just a silent face behind Hawkeye and Trapper's hijinks. Producer Larry Gelbart felt the character was missing something. He actually said he wanted someone with a quirkier personality. One we wouldn't have to write into the script. Which is such a classic TV move. You need someone who just radiates warmth and gentle confusion without saying a word. Morgan was fine, but it wasn't quite the right fit. Enter William Christopher, who nailed the role and stayed with MASH for all 11 seasons. He even came back for the sequel show, Aftermash. As for George Morgan, this part stings a little. His acting career never really bounced back. He had a minor movie role in 1990, more than 15 years after that silent pilot appearance. He's still in the opening credits for every episode, so he remains, in a small way, tied to the show forever. Speaking of departures, this next one changed the fabric of MAS and actually made television history. Let's talk about McLean Stevenson and Colonel Henry Blake. Stevenson played Colonel Blake for the first 3 seasons, and people adored him. He led the 4077th but wasn't your typical tough guy military commander. He was warm, kind of frazzled, prone to letting Hawkeye and Trapper get away with whatever they wanted. His bond with Radar, the sweet company clerk who seemed to always know what Blake needed, was something special. Audiences loved him, but Stevenson wanted out. It wasn't about feuds or drama. Every account says the MASH set was a genuinely friendly place. He felt lost in the shuffle, part of a big ensemble, and as the show skyrocketed, he started wanting a starring role of his own. He wanted to see his name in lights, not blend in among a crowd. So, he made the leap. The writers decided they'd let him leave the show, but they weren't about to let him slip away unnoticed. The season 3 finale, Abyssinia Henry, takes Colonel Blake out in a way no one saw coming. He gets his discharge papers. He's going home. Everybody in the camp erupts, laughing, crying, hugging, and just letting loose. Blake was the heart of that place, so the send-off felt big and genuine. He hops in a jeep, waves goodbye, and heads for the airstrip. That's the happy ending everyone expects, the one TV usually gives you. Except MASH wasn't just any show. Right when you think everyone gets closure, Radar bursts into the operating room. Surgery's happening, blood, chaos, and he's holding a message. The look in his eyes says everything. He reads it out. Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. No survivors. Nothing fancy, no swelling music, just a brutal announcement. Silence falls. Then, the surgeons keep operating. Because war doesn't stop for heartbreak. The moment hit hard, raw and honest. Back in 1975, nobody expected TV to handle things like that. Major characters didn't die. They got nice exits and moved on, maybe popped up in spin-offs. Killing off Colonel Blake, especially the way they did it, shocked everyone. CBS ended up cutting that ending from reruns because people reacted so intensely. Viewers wrote angry letters. Some were genuinely grieving. But the writers made a choice. MAS wouldn't sugarcoat the reality behind its jokes. War is messy, people die. Sometimes, the ones you love just don't come back. That episode cemented MASH as a show willing to talk about consequences. Now, let's talk about McLean Stevenson. He left MAS, hoping the magic would follow. He got his own sitcom, The McLean Stevenson Show. But it never really worked. Other projects, guest roles, and even a stint on The Tonight Show followed, but nothing felt like MAS. Years later, Stevenson talked about it, and, honestly, what he said sticks with me. He thought, when I left the show, the mistake wasn't in leaving. The mistake was that I thought everybody in America loved McLean Stevenson. That was not the case. Everybody loved Henry Blake. Read that again. Everybody loved Henry Blake, not McLean Stevenson. And that's the bittersweet truth. Sometimes people don't love you, they love your role, your character, the version of you that fit perfectly in that specific magical place. Changing scenery doesn't always carry the magic with you. Plenty of us chase the next thing, convinced it'll be better, only to realize we left behind the best version of ourselves. Stevenson apparently considered it one of his biggest regrets, knowing that seeing Colonel Blake on reruns feels a little heavier now. Switching gears, another big name left those early seasons. This departure stings in a different way. Wayne Rogers played Trapper John McIntyre, Hawkeye's best friend and partner in crime. They were equals at first, equally funny, equally sharp, equally irreverent. Rogers could have auditioned for Hawkeye, but he was drawn to Trapper's slightly lighter, easier energy. He took the role expecting he'd get equal footing in the show, but Alan Alda's Hawkeye quickly became the star. As Alda dominated scripts and screen time, Trapper faded into a sidekick. Rogers felt cheated. His promises about the role weren't honored. He decided to leave. The producers blew a gasket, threatened lawsuits, but here's the twist. Wayne Rogers never actually signed his contract. He objected to a morality clause and just never put pen to paper. So when he wanted out, nobody could stop him. His exit is the show's most abrupt. Trapper John is gone between seasons. Next season, he's already home. No farewell episode, no touching goodbye. Not even a note for Hawkeye. It's brutal in its simplicity. He just vanishes. Hawkeye learns his best friend left, and that's it. If you've ever lost someone in messy circumstances, if you've ever felt robbed of a proper goodbye, this moment stings. Rogers went on to work in TV, even landing the lead in House Calls, but like Stevenson, nothing matched MASH's lightning in a bottle. When the franchise spun off Trapper John, MD, they recast the role, didn't even ask Rogers back. That had to hurt. Larry Linville, who portrayed Major Frank Burns, rounds out this trio of departures. If you remember MASH, you remember Frank Burns, mean-spirited, self-righteous, always feuding, always making life harder for everyone. Linville inherited the role from Robert Duvall in the original movie, a tough act to follow. Linville nailed it, making Frank so delightfully awful that viewers genuinely despised him. After 5 seasons, though, Linville called it, he felt burnt out, tired of playing the villain, and he noticed the show was shifting. MASH got more serious, and Frank's cartoonish villainy started feeling out of place, a relic from earlier days that didn't fit the more grown-up direction. And that's how it goes. People outgrow roles. Shows evolve. Sometimes you're left behind, either because you chose to move on or because the story moved on without you. MASH never let its viewers forget. Real life doesn't wrap up neatly, and sometimes you don't get the closure you want. It's messy, funny, heartbreaking, and honest. That's why it still resonates decades later. So Frank left, finally. The show didn't just have him shuffle off quietly either. They gave him a real exit. His heart gets stomped on when Margaret ends things and announces she's getting married. Frank doesn't take it well. He melts down in public in Seoul, gets sent back to the States for a psychiatric evaluation, and winds up running a VA hospital instead. The mood at the 4077th? Not exactly grief-stricken. Honestly, you get the sense everyone just breathes a little easier once Frank's gone. What stands out about Larry Linville's departure is just how purposeful it felt compared to some of the others. He saw his chance and took it, walking out at a time that fit the story. It wasn't chaotic or rushed. He closed the door himself. Still, even though he left on his own terms, his post-MASH career hit the same wall as those before him. There were plenty of guest spots and passing roles in films, but nothing even came close to the pop culture shadow Frank Burns cast over everything else he did. Then you have Gary Berghoff, Radar, and, honestly, his exit stings in a different way because this is the character everybody loved. Berghoff's the only one who did both the movie and the TV show, and he brought a sort of magic that you can't fake or replace. Radar was just good. Oddly innocent and earnest, hovering around Blake at exactly the right moment, somehow always knowing what was needed before anyone said a word. He was the heart of the 4077th. No one else in that camp seemed so unspoiled by the war or by the world. By season 8, though, the grind wore Berghoff down. The schedule was brutal, and he couldn't keep doing it, despite seeing how tough it was for actors who left the show before him. But even knowing the risks, he chose to walk away. Radar's departure wasn't just moving, it was gutting. The story gave his exit real weight. Following a family tragedy, he's granted a hardship discharge so he can go home. The whole camp gathers to see him off. There's this tearful farewell. Klinger hands over his infamous dress, which Radar had been chasing for years. Everyone hugs him. Hawkeye is crushed. Watching Radar hop into that Jeep, suddenly looking like the farm kid he'd always been, you really feel it. You know something important just ended, for all of them and for the series. No one could really fill that gap. Sure, Jamie Farr's Klinger brought his own charm, and he stepped up as company clerk, but Radar was special. His absence just lingered over those last seasons, and you could always feel it. The show never quite got that innocence back. Berghoff tried to keep Radar alive after leaving MASH. He showed up for a guest spot in Aftermath, and they even shot a spin-off pilot, Walter, about Radar becoming a police officer. It didn't go anywhere, though. Just like Linville and the others, nothing really matched what came before for him. And honestly, stopping here for a moment makes sense. MAH wasn't just another show. It was a cultural tidal wave. These actors got to be part of something bigger than themselves, something that shaped the way people thought about TV, and even about war. That sort of lightning doesn't strike twice. It's not about lack of talent, Every one of those actors could go toe-to-toe with anyone. It's just the way things come together sometimes. That alchemy of the right people, right time, and the right cultural mood. That's the stuff you can't chase down again, no matter how hard you try. The final, classic MASH lineup. Alan Alda's Hawkeye, Loretta Swit's Margaret, Harry Morgan as Colonel Potter, Jamie Farr as Klinger, Mike Farrell as BJ, William Christopher as Father Mulcahy, and David Ogden Stiers as Charles Winchester really became something remarkable. Watching how the cast evolved across those 11 seasons is fascinating. Think about the early days. Season 1's mostly slapstick, rough around the edges, but the chemistry's there, bubbling up between the jokes. By Season 2, they'd started leaning on the ensemble, finding how the pieces fit. Then Season 3 lands that gut punch, Henry Blake's sudden death. That's the moment everybody realized this wasn't just an ordinary sitcom. Anything could happen. Season 4 is a turning point, absorbing the shock of losing both Blake and Trapper. Instead of falling apart, the show steps up. Potter and BJ arrive and just slide right into place. No growing pains. MASH gets deeper, darker. It really starts to dig into what war does to its people, not just as a backdrop for the gags, but as the whole emotional core. By Season 5 and 6, they've polished the formula. Season 6 sees Charles Winchester appear, and wow, what an upgrade over Frank. Winchester is arrogant, sure, definitely a snob, but he's sharp and shockingly complex. He challenges Hawkeye and BJ, calls them out, and you can see how the dynamic shifts. The conflict isn't just one-sided comedy anymore. It's about real personalities clashing and sometimes connecting. Season 7 is probably the show at its most assured. Everyone knows who they are, and the writing just sings. And Margaret, by then, she's left hot lips behind, growing from an easy punchline into a genuine, three-dimensional human being. Watching her struggle to find herself, to peel back those layers of strict army training, makes her one of TV's most memorable women. That transformation, carried over 11 years, is something you rarely see on television. So, sure, actors came and went. Some exits were messy, some were graceful, but MASH kept finding a way to grow. It was always bigger than the sum of its parts, and maybe that's why nobody, not even its brightest stars, could ever fully escape its gravity after leaving. By the time MASH hit seasons 9, 10, and 11, you could feel the exhaustion start to creep in around the edges. Fans picked up on it. The gags got a bit weightier, the shadows deeper. What had once been this wild balancing act, making you roar with laughter one minute and sit in stunned silence the next, started to wobble. By season 10, you'd catch a whiff of déjà vu in some storylines, like the writers were treading old ground. But even with a few scuffed edges, season 11 scattered in flashes of brilliance, moments that reminded you why this show mattered. Still, it felt like the series was winding down, like everyone involved knew there wasn't much left to say. And then came that legendary ending. Goodbye, farewell, and amen. February 28, 1983. It wasn't just an episode, it was an event. 2.5 hours, and every single character you'd grown to care about got their curtain call, their closure, their shot at peace. Over 100 million people, 106 million to be exact, tuned in. Hawkeye lost his grip. Margaret's composure broke. BJ, ever the quiet anchor, spelled out a goodbye in white stones. A silent message Hawkeye saw as the helicopter pulled him away from Korea. From everyone, from the world he'd known for years. After 11 seasons and an incredible 251 episodes, MASH didn't just fade away, it slammed the door and left the world watching in the aching quiet. If you look at numbers, MASH cleaned up. 100 Emmy nominations, 14 wins. But the numbers don't really tell the story. This was the first show to take comedy seriously, to show that laughter and heartbreak could sit side by side, each sharpening the other. Before MAS, a sitcom stuck to safe territory, but this show waded right into the mess. It asked tough questions and let its characters break down, get bitter, heal, and screw up, all within a half hour. You want a show with guts and heart? MASH laid the blueprint. You can trace its DNA right to Scrubs. Medical chaos hiding real, vulnerable lives underneath, but honestly, TV hasn't quite landed in the same spot since. They tried to keep the flame burning. After MASH brought back beloved faces like Colonel Potter, Klinger, and Mulcahy to a Missouri Veterans Hospital, Harry Morgan, Jamie Farr, and William Christopher all returned, and Gary Berghoff even popped in his radar for a moment. But Alda stepped away, and it turned out take out Hawkeye and the center sort of falls apart. The show had plans to bring Alda back, but it was canceled before he could return. They tried other spin-offs too. Trapper John, MD, ran for years on its own steam, and someone even attempted a solo radar pilot. But nothing really worked. Nothing caught that exact lightning again. That's probably how it had to be. MASH belonged to a certain moment, its people, its chemistry, its cultural restlessness. The country was still bruised and raw from Vietnam, grappling with what war actually meant and what it cost. MASH took those feelings and wrapped them in the story of another war, one with plenty of distance, but the same wounds. It invited people to laugh, to grieve, to work through anger and confusion, and to ask again and again, why do we keep doing this to ourselves? You could feel creator Larry Gelbart's argument running beneath everything. War is empty, war is waste, people shouldn't be sent to kill one another just to make a point. For 11 seasons, with one of the best TV casts ever assembled, MASH returned to that theme, each week pushing just a little further, daring people to feel and reflect. Then, on that February night in '83, over 100 million viewers, more than most Super Bowls, sat down to say goodbye together. If you've never watched MASH, or if your memories have faded with time, I honestly hope you give it another shot. The jokes are still sharp. The pain is still real. In a world where we don't always know how to talk, really talk, about suffering or fear, MASH stands as this huge, beating-hearted reminder that art can help us through. A TV show can crack you up and punch you in the gut within the same hour and leave you thinking about it for days. That's the legacy, really. Sure, the Emmys stacked up, and yeah, the record-setting finale hasn't been topped in 4 decades. But the best legacy, right now, somewhere, someone, is watching MASH for the first time. Maybe they're in college, or they're homesick, or they stumbled across it late at night. They see Radar, eyes wide and haunted, reading the bulletin about Colonel Blake's plane, and suddenly they're crying. Just like everyone else did back in 1975. Or they see Hawkeye's helicopter lifting away, the stones spelling out goodbye below, and they get that strange, bittersweet feeling. Are they laughing? Or crying? Or both? That moment, that's the club. We've kept the seats warm for you. And there's always space for one more.